for making this. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos. My name is Patricia Perez, and I am AARP California's State President Emeritus. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this online celebration because today we are kicking off our financial security series titled Let's Talk Dinero. And I think everybody, no matter the language, everybody understands what dinero means. No matter your age, it's not too late to plan your financial future, and it's up to you. And actually, all of you are starting today. So thank you so much for joining us. I know that talking about money is not easy for many of us, and that with all the information out there, it can be a little overwhelming at times, but don't worry, we're gonna, solve that for you. The information that Let's Talk Dinero will provide will help both you and your family by building a strong financial plan and to be better prepared for the future. And seriously, who doesn't want to be in a better position to help your familia, right? We all want to be there for them. Also think of it this way. You work very hard for every dollar you earn, and the last thing you want is for somebody to take that away from you. So that brings me to today's topic. Home ownership is the most important source of wealth building. And for many of us, our home is the most important, valuable asset that we own. That's why today we're going to talk about protecting those hard-earned assets and how to recognize and avoid home ownership scams. Así que ojo al gato. We need to all be, on point and know what is out there. So it is my pleasure now to welcome Rosario Mendes. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Rosario. She is an attorney in the Division of Consumer and Business Education of the Federal Trade Commission, Bureau of Consumer Protection, where she works on fraud protection, cybersecurity education for small business, charity fraud issues, Latino outreach, and much, much more. Her work supports the agency's mission to protect all consumers from deceptive fair practices through law enforcement and consumer education. She is here to share valuable information and answer all your questions. So be sure to ask away in the chat. All right. She's here, for you. So be sure to ask anything you want to know. Rosario, bienvenida. Welcome. For those who are not familiar with it, please, for those who are not familiar, please describe the FTC and why it's important.
Sure. Thank you so much, Patricia and AARP and your team for having me here. It is my pleasure to be here sharing information and helping people be aware of scams and frauds that happen, and also some scams that relate to home ownership and home improvement scams that we'll talk about later. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is the federal agency that handles consumer protection laws. So we are a federal agency. Our headquarters are in Washington, D.C. We do have offices in California, one in San Francisco and one in San Diego. In Los Angeles. And so Los Angeles and San Francisco. I am located in headquarters in the Washington, D.C. office. So I am thankful that we can do this via Zoom so I can be there with you guys today. And so as the nation's consumer protection agency, we enforce all the consumer protection laws. We take complaints, we take reports from people so that we know what is going on in terms of consumer protection issues. And we enforce those laws. We sue companies who are deceiving consumers, who have bad business practices that impact communities. And so my job specifically in the Division of Consumer and Business Education has to do with communicating to the public the messages and alerts so that they can protect themselves from scams. So when we know what kind of things scammers are doing, the different twists that they're taking on old scams, or when we have new and different pitches for their scams, we alert people about that. And we put out information on consumer.gov ftc.gov, our main website with consumer information. We put out blogs. We do have social media, and we try to communicate those messages of fraud prevention, and so that people can be alert to those scams and avoid them if they experience something similar.
Thank you. To give you an idea of the people that are, our audience that are watching you right now, I'm going to take a quick poll. I'm going to ask you, please, to answer a question, true or false. I have been a victim of frauds or scams. Either you or someone that you know. So please answer if you or someone you know has been a victim of a fraud or a scam. This will give us an idea how prevalent the problem is. So just click on the dot and submit. And let's see, Adriana's going to let us know what the results are.
Yes, let's let
Yeah,
folks
please.
answer.
Yeah, let us. It's confidential. We just want to give Rosario an idea of how, real this problem is, even though I'm sure you see it every day, Rosario.
Okay, we're gonna close.
I think
We're gonna close the poll right now. It seems like we got most of the answers. Oh wow, this is so interesting. Patricia and Rosario and audience, it's about 50-50. It's actually exactly 50% said yes and 50% said no of the audience
that's
here.
great.
Seriously, that
But
is
you know
fabulous.
what? Yes. And you know what, Patricia, I am not surprised because I feel like the AARP audience is very informed and very alert. And also, at the same time, sometimes we don't know that we have been taken. There are some scams where you will never know. There's donation scams, for example. You donate to charity, you have no idea if that money actually went to, do what it was what you intended it to do, or if it went to a scammer that was behind the charity. So there are some places sometimes where we just simply don't know. And there's also times where, many people are very informed, especially your audience, and, they've had experiences and they have lived and they know, how to identify those scams. So that's really wonderful. It's still so important to talk about scams and especially spread the word to others and pass the information to others.
No, and you're right. I mean, ARP does a really great job of constantly, making people aware, having resources available, and talking about it, getting us to open up, giving people, resources and where to go. So yes, true. But thank you for letting us know that many times we don't even know, right? All these letters that we get, all these emails, these texts, everything, and so you never know if a charity is legit. And also, I'm sure we'll talk about it, so I'm not going to take away your talking about, but they seize on the moment, right? Whether it's a pandemic or an emergency. But Rosario, tell us, which are the top scams, either at the national level or that you're seeing here in California? Give us an idea of what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, this is just a good segue to talk a little bit about what we see nationally, and then also what we see in California. And so the Federal Trade Commission takes reports from people, as I said. People report to reportfraud.ftc.gov. And we get those reports go to a database that is accessed by FTC, but also around 3,000 other law enforcement agencies across the country. And so there's also organizations that receive reports and put it in our database as well. And so on and all, I can tell you that last year in 2021, we received 5.7 million reports in total from consumers. 2.8 million of those reports had to do with fraud. So 2.8 million reports where people said, I experienced fraud, I actually, experienced fraud one way or another. And of those who said that they actually paid the scammer, I can tell you that the losses amounted to $5.9 billion. I think you're seeing the graphic on the screen now. So that is very substantial. It's a substantial amount of money that is lost to fraud every year. This was just last year, and it was an increase from the previous year. And we do know that this is actually a low number in terms of reports and losses, because people don't report. It's, fraud goes underreported, really. And so it's just astonishing that we received this amount of reports last year, and we do know that there's still more out there. The top reports that we received last year were related to identity theft, impersonator scams, and also things related to the credit bureaus. And actually in California specific, from California, we received about 108,000 reports from people in California. The median loss was around $775. So the median loss nationally, like when people lost money, in average, they lost about $500. In California, at least from the reports that we got, it looks like people lost a little bit more. But the reports actually amounted to very similar than what the national numbers were in terms of the number one report from California related to identity theft, the second one related to imposter scams, impersonator scams, and the third one related to problems with the credit bureaus. And I want to emphasize imposter scams a little bit, because this one is always on the top of the list, as well as identity theft. And imposter scams, are those calls that you get saying that is someone from the federal government, say from the Social Security Administration, and there's a problem with your Social Security number, and you have to call back immediately. And if you do, they say that you have to pay money to solve some kind of problem that there is supposedly with your Social Security. And it's a complete scam. The Social Security Administration is not going to call you. It's not going to charge you any money over the phone. And so we get those reports from people, also calls from the IRS. Those are all government impersonator scams, we call them. So those are part of the reports that we get, and it's always on the top of the list. So I wanted to highlight that, because people still get those calls, and sometimes they sound very threatening, and it could be, intimidating, and people can be, so scared and sometimes feel threatened and end up paying money to the scammer when, they don't have to do that, because the government will never call you to ask you for money over the phone, or, and much less, they're never going to ask you to pay the way that the scammers ask you to pay, which is a lot of times with cryptocurrency, with gift cards, with wire transfers.
No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, nobody wants to have problems with the IRS, right? And I know that you're talking about the numbers that are reported, when we know in reality, a lot of these go unreported. And I mean, and it really, people should not feel bad, because sometimes these scammers are like super, super good. Like you said, they're intimidating, they're threatening, they sound so real, so professional. And for, people who are, not prepared, unaware, I mean, it really is frightening, right? If you may lose your Social Security, or having problems with the IRS. And so absolutely, yes, I believe it. And Rosario, you had also talked about people who seize the opportunity, seize the moment. Have you heard of any scams specific to COVID-19? Are there any pandemic related scams that you're aware of?
Yes, I mean, we see that the scammers follow the headlines, they follow the news. So they go where where the information is and what the people's needs are. And with the pandemic, we have seen scams related specifically to, for example, bogus products that say that they would cure or prevent COVID. We have sent warning letters to companies that have been promoting things like everything from chiropractic adjustments or exercise sessions or nasal mist, different products and therapies that supposedly they advertise them as being a cure to COVID or that would prevent it, when they don't have the scientific evidence to prove that that is true. And so we have sent warning letters to companies saying, you know, we see your advertisement and you don't have the scientific proof. You got to change that advertisement. You got to take it down. You got to make it or face the consequences because you're violating the law. So we have seen companies doing this, and we have seen them change sometimes. But it's very important that people are aware that there are a lot of, you know, bogus health products out there. And the important thing is to check, you know, if it's if they have the scientific proof, you know, behind what they're saying. A lot of times they say that they do, but when you dig a little deeper, they don't. And, you know, as we know, there's really no cure to COVID right now. You know, we have the vaccine, which can prevent, you know, the spread. But people need to be really careful with when they see products that say, you know, that promise one thing, but they don't have the evidence to back it up. We also have seen, for example, companies that have texted or sent emails related to bogus COVID vaccine surveys. That was last year very popular. Supposedly, you know, you would get a text saying that it was Pfizer or that it was Moderna, and it was a survey related to the vaccine. And what they were doing was just collecting people's information. And sometimes they would even ask you to pay for what, you know, for something, like they would just come up with some kind of story if you contacted them, some kind of story for why you have to pay them. So there are things related to COVID that we see. And the important thing is people to be on the alert, you know, and follow the trusted sources, follow, you know, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the FDA, their state health department for information on COVID and the coronavirus pandemic, you know, and get information from the trusted sources and not from someone who just randomly calls you out of the blue and tells you something or tries to sell you something over the phone or on a text or email.
Absolutely, that's critical. I know that you were saying that when you get these offers, you know, in terms of, you know, pandemic related, you know, items, to do research, but really just go to trusted sources, the CDC, the, you know, your state government, you know, sites. You can even check, you know, COVID information on the ARP website. So please just go to, you know, sites that you know, that you trust, and, you know, just better be safe. Mejor prevenir, mejor prevenir. All right, Rosario, we've also heard, I think many of us have heard of all these mortgage relief offers, but I know most of them, you know, are actually scams. Can you please tell our audience a little bit more about them?
Yes, we have seen it, unfortunately, like I said before, you know, the scammers follow the news and they go and try to find people that are in need because, you know, they think to offer exactly what we need, right? So they follow, they follow the news and they know where to get, you know, the information. And so what we have seen a lot is problems related to when people having problems paying for bills. The scammers are right there trying to offer a solution, and mortgage is one of them, for example. So specifically with mortgage relief scams, the scammers just really target people who are desperate, homeowners who are desperate, looking to avoid foreclosure and to stay in their home. And the scammers just basically, they promise anything. They'll promise that they'll change, they'll be able to change your loan, the terms of your loan, so you can keep in your home. But really what they want you is to pay them upfront fees, to pay them in advance before they give any service or before they do any results. They want you to pay them. And that is the biggest red flag. If they ask you for money right away, don't do it. It's illegal for a company to actually charge you upfront fees for promises to help you get relief on paying your mortgage. So, so if you are in need of this help and you're looking out for a company to help you with mortgage relief payments, and they ask you to pay upfront, you know right away that this company is is not legit, because that is illegal to do. And if you're working with a lawyer, sometimes attorneys promote this service that they'll help you with mortgage relief, or your mortgage, get your mortgage company to change the terms of the loan. If you're working with a lawyer, make sure that they are licensed in the state where you live. Okay, so a lot of times there's advertisements online, and the lawyers can be in a different state. But with mortgage laws, with home ownership laws, it's really important that they are in your state. The company also cannot tell you to stop talking to your lender. So that's another red flag. If the company says, don't talk to your lawyer, I'll talk to them, for you, you always have the right to contact your lender directly and see whether you have rights, what kind of options you have. Whether you have options, and see if you can negotiate yourself, some kind of relief with the lender directly. Okay, companies that tell you to stop communicating with your lenders are definitely breaking the law and are not legitimate. So those are some of the things that I would say, if you are in this situation where you need, some help, just watch out for those things, because the scammers are out there trying to get people, and so it's better to just be aware.
Yeah, no, and I understand. I mean, mortgage payments, are hefty for many of us, but just remember, everybody, what, Rosario just said. One is, be aware they ask for upfront fees. That's one. What's the other one? That, they tell you not to talk to your lender, right?
Yes.
The other one is, make sure that if it's a law firm, oh my gosh, make sure that they're certified to work in your state, correct?
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you. You know what? We've also heard, of course, we're talking about our homes, right? Our most valuable asset. I've also heard a number of these home improvement scams. Many of us, our homes are like never ending type, money drains in a way, but that's the investment. But we've heard also of these, scams. What are some of the things people can do, or what have you heard of?
Yeah, so finding a trustworthy contractor is really important, because scammers will promise you to they'll do the work, but they will leave you, and they will leave your home sometimes even in a worse situation than the when they started. And we see a lot of these problems after emergencies, after the tornadoes, for example, after hurricanes, when there's a lot of damage and there's a lot of companies offering home improvement services. That, again, the scammers are following the news, they're following the headlines, so they know that there are gonna be people in need of these services. This is when we see this a lot, but it can happen to anyone, that is just simply looking to do some improvement in their home. So one of the things that the scammers, some of the red flags, some of the things that you can be on the lookout for is, if someone knocks on your door looking for business just because they're in the area, that sometimes is a red flag. You didn't call them, they just kind of like showed up. If they say that they have materials left over from a previous job, that also is kind of like a shady, offering, right? Because it's sort of like, okay, well, so watch out for those things. Also,
it sounds too good to be true, right? Too good to
right,
be true.
It's kind of like there's something extra from a previous job, and I want to use it here, and I'll give you a lower price. Those are the kind of things that they might tell you. They pressure you into making an immediate decision, like, the price is this now, tomorrow it's not going to be there. A legitimate company will always give you an opportunity to come back. They ask you to pay for everything up front. Again, these upfront fees that we talked about with mortgage reliefs too. Sometimes they ask you to pay for everything, or they only accept cash. That could be a sign too. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone will accept only cash is a scammer, but it's just they're just some things that to like kind of watch out for and see what your comfort level is before you commit. Now, if you do decide to commit, make sure that you are working with a contractor who is licensed and insured. So make sure that you ask them, you know, check to see that they have insurance and they're licensed in your state or in your county. Also, make sure that you read the contract carefully. So contract requirements vary by state, also, again, just like mortgage, but you know, there's different laws that relate to contracts. But you know, so in some states for home improvement, you don't need to have a contract. It's not required. But even if your state doesn't require it, it's a good idea to have something in writing. So make sure that you have something in writing from your contractor specifying the things that they're gonna do, and read it carefully to make sure that you understand what they're supposed to be doing and that you guys are on the same page, so that they cannot later say, oh, we didn't agree on this. So that's important to do upfront. It's also always a good idea to get recommendations from people that you know and trust when you're trying to get a contractor, you know, someone who's already, who a friend has used and has had a good experience with it. It's probably, you know, a better bet than trying to find somebody on your own. This would be my tips. And it's always a good idea to get multiple estimates as well.
Oh my God.
When you're dealing with different contractors.
And you know what, you're talking about all these opportunities, and I mean, who doesn't want a deal, right? Who doesn't want to be able to save money? If they're saying, oh, we're just going around your neighborhood and it's easier to do all of you guys at once. And I mean, who doesn't want to, you know, save a few bucks? But now that you're talking about it, oh my God, it's scary. And, you know, if you're not 100% sure, like you said, get estimates, make sure that they're licensed, they're bonded, you know, they have insurance, that, you know, all of these things.
So they have
get referrals, references. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like the whole point is, you know, you work hard for your money, you know, and it's, you know, it's just be alert, ask questions, you know, you don't have to say yes right away to these kind of things. You know, you can take your time and ask someone else. You know, sometimes when you talk to somebody else about, you know, the situation, the call that you received, or if you're hiring, you know, a contractor, or, you know, whatever situation that you're in, before you commit to the money, you know, if you talk to someone else, then you can kind of flush out what the situation is, and between you two can decide, oh, maybe this is not really that good of an idea. This maybe sounds like a scam, or maybe the other person has experience, you know, with that situation. So it's good to talk about all those things with someone else.
I know, if you're not, you know, 100% comfortable, that's a sign, right? The person doesn't have to be shifty, but if you're just not 100% there, then trust your instinct. And when it comes to like home repairs and these types of frauds, sometimes they're not like huge dollar amounts. They may be small dollar amounts, you know, that we might feel like, you know, or we, you know, chuck it up to experience. But how can somebody actually report fraud, and like what amounts you think, you know, should be reported?
I think, well, we want to hear from everybody about anything that they experience in terms of fraud, scams, or bad business practices. I mean, sometimes it may not necessarily be a scam, but it's just something that it seems deceiving or unfair. And we want to hear about that. And it's very easy to report fraud. You can go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. And there you can, you know, you start the process. The website is going to guide you through several questions and it asks you some questions very simply, but that is to get you to the right advice at the end, because at the end, after you finish reporting what you have experienced, you're going to get a list of things that you can do to kind of solve your situation. If it was, for example, if you paid money, if you actually paid the scammer, then some tips on how to try to get that money back. For example, if you pay with a credit card, or if you paid with a gift card, try, you know, to contact the gift card issuer and things like that. So you get some kind of advice to try to help you solve your situation, and not get into, and to avoid the situation in the future. But it's very simple. And then also all the information that you provide when you go to report fraud.ftc.gov, as I mentioned before, goes to a database that is managed by the FTC, but is accessed by other law enforcement agencies. And the importance of that is that it increases collaboration among the law enforcement agencies. So for example, if the Attorney General in California is investigating a company, they can look into the Consumer Sentinel database of the FTC and see if the same company has been, there's been reports about the same company in another state. And then they can collaborate, right? And they can share information, because the same company may be, acting in Virginia or in somewhere else, and then they can share information and try to together fight the scammer. And this happens all the time, where states partner up, with us, and with other law enforcement agencies, tries to stop the scammers. So reporting fraud is very, very important, and you should feel free to report anything. Like, it doesn't have to be, even if you didn't fall, we want to hear. Even if you didn't fall for the scam, we want to hear about it.
Yeah, Adriana just reminded us. One is the link of where you can go to report scams. Like Rosario was saying, you're letting the government know what to watch out for. You're helping your neighbor, your friends, because, if it's happened to you, it may happen to others. So just share that information with them. But also, Adriana reminded us, if you have a question, put it in the chat. Go ahead, Rosario.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, Patricia, that you can report in Spanish.
Qué bueno.
En español,
Buenísimo.
reportefraude.ftc.gov.
Yeah. So don't feel, well. Yeah, don't feel like, it was only $100 or, something, it's not worth, just report it, because you never know. All these little, items add up, and, if we can stop somebody from preying on us, that would be wonderful. And speaking of being targeted, Rosario, Let's Talk Dinero is about helping Latinos build financial security. But tell us, are Latinos more at risk for some of the scams that you've been talking about?
Well, I can tell you that, everyone is at risk. Like, scammers really, they go after anybody, and after every community. But I can tell you that analysis of FTC data from 2020, showed also that the we receive less reports from Latinos, from Latino communities, than from other communities. So we do know at least that that our people are not reporting fraud, but we know that they're experiencing fraud, because we have sued companies that they specifically are advertising in Spanish, or that specifically have been targeting the Latino community. So that's why it's so important to report. I can tell you that the top scam reported to the FTC by people living in majority Latino communities in 2020 was impersonator scams. Those are scams that I talked about, where you get a call saying that it's the federal government, but really all they want is your money or your personal information. Or they could be impersonating a company, like sometimes they impersonate, like, Apple or Microsoft. They try to get you to get into your computer for a tech support scam. But they're basically impersonating someone that you know and that you trust. They could be impersonating your bank. But what we see a lot is government impersonator scams. And then also, what I can tell you that people living in majority Latino communities filed a higher share of reports about credit bureaus. So things related to credit bureaus, banks and lenders, auto issues, we see a lot as well of complaints from Latino communities, and debt collection. So those are some of the issues that we know are impacting the community, or at least that people are complaining to us from majority Latino communities that are impacting them. And
Yeah.
you know, all those things impact every community. But when we see something that is more that is impacting, you know, the Latino community, for example, we want to make sure that we do outreach and that we have things available in Spanish and that we bring out the information so that people can protect themselves.
Yeah. And, you know, in California, I've also seen the utilities, right? I know we're talking about protecting our homes and all that, but I've also seen utilities going out periodically with information and telling us to beware, because sometimes imposters and scammers are preying on non-English speaking community. If they're Asian, if they're Latinos, right? Non-English speakers, and they'll show up like in utility uniforms and saying like they're there to shut off your power unless you pay them cash. And it might be $50, but they're just going door to door, you know, and it is, you know, crazy.
Yes,
So
that is a big
ahead.
scam, the utility scams, and I'm glad that you're seeing ads about that. It also impacts small businesses. We see you know, utility scammers calling a small business and saying, you know, your lights are going to be shut off, electricity is going to be cut off if you don't pay immediately because you have a debt. And you know, they're just banking on maybe the small business, whoever picks up the phone, it's not the same person, you know, that is in charge of paying the electricity, and they're like, you know, they need to keep the business going, so they're banking on that, you know, urgency. You know, they create that sense of urgency and emergency, and you know, they say that something terrible is going to happen if you don't pay, and that is what we need to be alert about, because you know, if you feel like that, it's like, take a step back, talk to someone, ask a coworker before you decide to pay.
Yeah. And you know what?
Patricia?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, we do have a question on chat. I'll go
Perfect.
ahead and read that from Sharon Rouser. She writes, I've recently seen commercials about buying insurance to protect the title on your house. Is this as big a problem as these commercials advertise?
Rosario, ándale.
Yeah. So so titles, the home title problem. So I would just be worried. I would just be aware, because when you purchase a home, you know, usually there is you know, usually you buy insurance, homeowner title insurance in the transaction of buying the home. So you may already have that. You know, you may already have that service, and you may not know it. So I don't really know much about, you know, scams related to that problem, or to that situation. But I can tell you that if you see something on TV, not necessarily it's true, right? Just because you see it on TV. So it's better to investigate a little bit, you know, find out if you are a homeowner, find out if you already have this insurance. And if you don't, maybe talk to your lender, or, you know, whoever, you know, has your mortgage, to see if this is something that you need, and maybe try to get it through them, or, you know, at least get some information. You can always search online, of course, but this is a good thing to, you know, go directly to, you know, your mortgage lender, and maybe even talk to, you know, your friends and family to see if anyone has had this experience before.
You know, and AARP also has a fraud watch network that provides information and tools needed to protect you and, of course, your loved ones from frauds and scams, including letting you know like what the common ones are going around. And you can visit it on the AARP website at fraudwatchnetwork.org. And you can also call a report to report a fraud at 877-908-3360. If you have any questions, please put them on the chat. Are there any other questions? Because if not, I have a number of them. Adriana, Priscilla, are there any other questions? Because if not, Rosario, what can consumers do if they've paid a scammer? They've already, their money's already left their pockets.
Yeah, that is a good question. We have some information at ftc.gov/scams. In Spanish is ftc.gov/estafas. But basically, if you pay, so, what we see a lot are scammers asking people to pay in ways that are untraceable and that cannot be reversed, right? So like cryptocurrency, paying with gift cards, they ask for payment via wire transfer, bank transfers. And it is because of those ways are very difficult to track and very difficult to get your money back. That's why we always, we always tell people that if they can, when they make a purchase online, for example, or something like that, to pay with a credit card, because you have more, more rights if something goes wrong with the purchase. So if you ended up paying a scammer and you paid with a credit card, the first thing is to call your credit card company and tell them about the fraudulent transaction and, try to get the transaction reversed or stopped. And if you paid with, in another way, for example, if you pay with gift cards, it's more complicated, but you should contact the gift card issuer, because there could be something that they can do to stop the person from using the gift card number further. Because basically when they ask you to pay with gift cards, what they want is for you to give them the gift card numbers in the back. And so you can contact, and we have the contact information for the major gift card issuers that we see scammers use at ftc.gov/scams. If you pay
Rosario, sorry, but I guess the biggest tip is try to avoid paying cash, right? Go credit card,
Well, yeah, if you pay cash,
it's tough.
There's no way to get it back. But
and Steve has a question about that, Rosario, because he said that how can the FTC follow up on, all of these reports, considering, the employees, the staff available. So
yeah, no, that's a good question. So we are not going to resolve individual complaints. So we're not going to go per to see each report and solve that person's problem. But what we are going to do is that we're going to look at trends, right? So we're going to look at what is happening, a lot of people complaining about the same company, a lot of people complaining about that one particular issue. And then, we investigate and we talk to our partners, our state partners, other federal agencies to see what they are seeing. And then, that's how we can establish cases and lawsuits to stop the scammers and to stop the company that is doing the bad practice. So that's why the reports are so important.
So it may not
collectively they give us the information that we need.
So it may not be a case by case, but obviously you're dealing with, trends and big issues. So it's really up to all of us to be as informed as possible, not only for ourselves, but also to keep an eye out for others, for our parents, for our neighbors, for others, and, and help each other out. And a reminder for everyone, all of these resources can be found on the FTC website at www.ftc.gov. And ARP also has resources and information on the website at www.aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork, or call 877-908-3360. Let's see, do we have any last question? Oh, somebody said, how can somebody, let's say if something is reported, how can people stay updated on the latest information?
Yeah, that's, when you report when you report something to reportfraud.ftc.gov, you're going to get a report number, and you can always go back and check, you know, and get updates on that, you know, on the report. But like I said, you know, you're not going to get a resolution to your particular problem. But you can always go back and, for example, a lot of times the scammers call again, or something else happens that you want to add to, you know, you want to update your report and you want to add that, and you are able to do that with the report number that you will get.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is that if people want to like know what is happening, what scams are taking, you know, go to the ARP site, because you can sign up for information. So you would get regular information. You can visit the website. So there's ways to know what's happening in you know, in your area as well. Let's see, Steve, hold on one second. Let me read this one. He says that should Medicare scams and misleading advertising also be reported to the FTC or to CMS? What,
Yes, you
maybe
should
both?
If you can, you should report them to both, because we have different jurisdictions, and so we can tackle the issue in different ways. So yes, it's important to report it to both.
And you know what? If anybody has been scammed, it's like, forget, you know, Nextdoor, forget Facebook, just report it to the organizations, you know, to the FTC, go to the right people, call your bank, call your credit card, call your, you know, the gift cards, let people know that this is happening, you know, and of course I shouldn't say don't do it on Nextdoor, especially if they're going door to door, but don't just leave it there, you know, do something, because you're not only helping yourself, you're helping others. But anyway, that's my little soapbox.
It's true.
Rosario, again, you
Good
know,
advice.
gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the information. Muchísimas gracias for joining us and providing us with fraud prevention information and sharing your expertise. Because as they say, más vale prevenir, right? But give us your final comments, please. What would you like us to remember and take away?
I just want people to know that it's so important to report fraud. There is no shame on it. You can do it anonymously if you want to. So just report what you're experiencing so that we know, especially in the Latino community. It's so important that we, you know, raise our voices and that we say what are the kind of scams that are targeting our communities, so that the federal agencies can and the state agencies can take action and stop these scammers from targeting us. And if you want to be connected to the FTC and receive our consumer alerts, you can go to ftc.gov/consumer alerts, ftc.gov/consumer alerts. And you can sign up that way to receive our blog and our consumer alerts that we put out pretty much every day. You can also sign up to receive them in Spanish at ftc.gov/alertas de consumidor.
And seriously, it's all of the people here today learning about what is happening in our communities and how we can protect ourselves, that results really in like the survey that we had, right? That only half of the people had been or knew of, right? When I thought like everybody knows somebody who's been scammed, it's like, nope, everybody's like really sharp and on point. So keep it up, you know, keep going to the source for information. So Rosario, I mean, again, muchísimas gracias for joining us, you know, and providing us with all this fraud prevention information and sharing your expertise. So thank you so much. And a special thanks goes to absolutely everyone for joining the first event of our new series, Let's Talk Dinero. We'll continue collaborating with financial experts across the state to talk about asset protection, debt management, caregiving costs, retirement planning, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. And of course, join us on May the 16th. There it is, May 16th, for our next event, caregiving expenses. So muy bien. But of course, you know, you're also welcome to visit the website at, you know, at AARP Let's Talk Dinero for the schedule of events and for many, many free resources. So again, Rosario, muchísimas gracias. Thank you for the information. Thanks everybody for watching and for staying informed. Como dicen, ojo, not only to the scammers and, for ourselves, but also for our loved ones, our neighbors, and each other. Muchísimas gracias for joining us, and buenas noches a todos. Hasta luego.
Thank you. Bye. Buenas noches.
Thank you, Rosario.